was contemplating the question as Alvaro was talking, and I was like, how do I reset? And a lot of times it is to the end of the day, it just kind of naturally resets. Like you go to sleep. Sometimes, some days, like things will carry over, but a lot of times I find just naturally for me, either it's my brain like, okay, let's just forget it or bury it down somewhere, and then it'll come up some other time. But for now, uh, that's what I kind of noticed.
It's so important to stop and reflect back where we are, but also, and this goes together, like where are we with others, right? Because so many times we just get, in this go about whatever it is that we have on ourselves, right? And everything is about what we need to do, and we don't get engaged enough with all the significant others that we have in our lives. And we put like priority work, and we sacrifice many times our most precious relationships with our families and with our friends, and which means that we're putting ourselves, you know, on a second plate, and we put our responsibilities up front, and that has a toll. That has a huge toll in how we feel, in our productivity, and in our whole life experience. And so, that's putting a pause for a second, and it's like, hey, where are we? How are we doing? And reaching out and celebrating being with others. And particularly this year that has been so weird, and we've, by need, we've had to isolate, right? And right now, for me, it's so precious to, the few times that I have, to interact with people, and which is barely with on a physical basis, right?
Yeah.
But those that have fortunate to have that, family and stuff like that close by, wow, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I
I
digress.
agree. How many times I've put, the people that are most precious to me to the side. It's taken for granted, and it's not like a conscious decision, but it's like, oh, they're there, so I better work on this now because they're there. It's like it's almost like you rely on that, but it also sacrificing that too long. And I had in previous parts of my life when I was complete workaholic, sacrificed it to a point of break point, where it wasn't going to work. And even now, as you were saying that, I'm loving the words. I'm like, taking notes over here myself, because, it's just another reminder, like, how many times can I give more time to those folks that are most important to me, just like I would to clients. And there was a period of time in my life where I would give more time to clients than my own, people that are the most important to me, like my wife and my kids. And so now I really am as conscious as I can be, but I'm going to take a note right now, even though I'm way better than I was before. I can take note to your words right now, Alvaro, and say, hey, how can I do it more? How can I be there more? What do you think, Jovanni? What's the best way? Like, so if you're reflecting on this, whether it's, hey, I didn't give enough time to my significant other, or I didn't do this, or whatever, it's all those, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. I find a lot of people get to this end of the year, either someone's celebrating, they're like, oh my gosh, I made it through 2020 and I want it to be over, or they're reflecting and saying all these things that shoulda, coulda, woulda. If those things pop in your head, Jovanni, and I don't know if they do, but if they, how do you reset? How do you give yourself self-compassion and say, hey, I'm going to reset and I'm going to allow this and just be, what's your best strategy?
Yeah, I don't know if it's always conscious when I do it. I think a lot of times is just kind of just I forget about it. Like I don't know. It's weird. As I was contemplating the question as Alvaro was talking, and I was like, how do I reset? And a lot of times it is to the end of the day, it just kind of naturally resets. Like you go to sleep. Sometimes, some days, like things will carry over, but a lot of times I find just naturally for me, either it's my brain like, okay, let's just forget it or bury it down somewhere, and then it'll come up some other time. But for now, that's what I kind of noticed. But then something that came up to me as you was asking the question again, though, was is Carl Buchheit, what he taught all three of us, right, is the oh wow thing, right? The whole process of OMG, WTF, okay. And then I love the last part of it is like, what would I like now, right? Um, and when I first learned that, I seriously, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, like I was like telling every person I could who would listen to me, like, hey, I just learned this new thing. You'll love it. It's called Oh Wow. And like just explaining the whole thing. And they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm like, everybody goes through this process anyway, but nobody, like very few people actually do the last part of, well, actually the last two parts of saying, okay. And then what would I like? And that what would I like part, I think is a huge thing for me, just because, okay, if something does carry over from the day, the week, month, year, whatever, I'm just like, I'm still in the same place. Like, okay, once I finally accept it and just saying, okay. And then I ask myself that question, what would I like instead? Or what would I like now? Or how do I want to feel? What would I like to feel? Like, it gives myself to pause and actually really think about it. Okay, what do I want instead? And then it allows me to kind of, okay, I'm tired of feeling this way. Let's try something else. And so that, I think, I don't always do that consciously these days, but I think it's always kind of running in the background. And then when I am conscious about it, then I do ask myself that question. And it's been really powerful for me to kind of just ask myself what I would like. And I think that in itself has that self-compassion, because you're asking yourself, instead of just keep beating yourself up like, oh my gosh, I'm sick and tired of this. And then you just go back to doing the same thing. But when you ask that question, it almost allows yourself to let that go. It's like, okay, I am tired of this, and that's totally okay to be tired of something that you don't want anymore. But then asking yourself, what would I like instead, or what would I like now? Like, just allows, I don't know, for me, just a lot of stuff starts moving. And it just, I think, as we're talking about it, it just allows the compassion to yourself. It's like, yeah, it is okay to ask yourself what you would like. I think so many people do put themselves on the back burner, right? As Alvaro was saying, even not just our loved ones, but ourselves, right? Because even when we're working, and like, if you're a workaholic, you're not just neglecting your family and stuff. You're usually neglecting yourself. You're not taking care of your health. You're not taking care of your mind. Usually not taking care of your spirit, like all that stuff. So within that whole, oh, wow, like it sums it up all for me, like brings it back.
Yeah. And when we're doing like, how come? Where did we learn, right, to put ourselves as, on the back burner? Right? That everything and anything else takes precedent to our wants and to our needs and to our, sometimes even to our well-being, right? Yeah. And as Jovanni was saying, so many of those things are out of our conscious awareness, and the practice of bringing it up front and being able to consciously look at them and feel them, it's sometimes it's really hard.
Hey there, I want to give you something really big. It's called Clear Path to Customers. It's the way that we get the right language to get the right client. I like to call them your wow clients, so that you can have more results, more revenue, more raving fans, and more referrals. And I want to give this to you absolutely free. And all you have to do is go to stevenapolitan.com to check it out, or you can look at the description here. We'll put the details there. As always, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.